Day continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Danny Laurel. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Anti-Money Laundering Council reports increased suspicious transactions involving casino junkets. The AMLC said there were over 3,000 suspicious transaction reports from September of 2018 to January this year, worth over 17 billion pesos. A separate data set shows over 4,000 reports by 4 integrated casino resorts from December 2021 to September 2022, also valued at over 17 billion pesos. With this, the council called for strengthened measures to combat money laundering and terrorism financing in the casino sector. Casino junkets are organized gaming tours for high rollers where casinos and junket operators earn from the money gambled by junket players during their visit. NEDA warns that inflation could threaten the country's economic growth in the next 2 years. NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said strong demand for consumption and investment will primarily drive the recovery. He noted, though, that domestic risks to inflation may dampen the outlook if upward price pressures force a hike in the policy rates. A Business World poll showed that 12 of 14 analysts expect the Monetary Board to further hike rates by 25 basis points. Balisacan said this will likely slow down consumption and investment as consumers and investors hold off of their spending. And over in the United States, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to a 16-year high and signaled further hikes ahead. The U.S. Fed voted unanimously to increase federal funds rate by 25 basis points to between 4.75 and 5% following its two-day meeting. Interest rates in the U.S. are now at their highest level since late 2007. U.S. Fed Chair Jerome Powell says the Fed will raise rates higher if needed. He says the Fed's focus remains on fighting inflation amid the turmoil in the banking sector.
If we need to raise rates higher, we will. I think for now, though, as I've mentioned, we see the likelihood of credit tightening. We know that can have an effect on the macroeconomy, on demand, on labor market, on inflation, and we're going to be watching to see what that is. And we'll also be watching what's happening with inflation and in the labor market. So we'll be watching all those things, and of course we will eventually get to tight enough policy to bring inflation down to 2%. We'll find ourselves at that place.
However, Powell admitted that the turmoil will probably take a toll on on growth and the economic outlook. Now, despite this, he reassured that the banking system remains safe and sound.
So let me say what I think happened, and then I'll come to the questions around supervision. So at a basic level, Silicon Valley Bank management failed badly. They grew the bank very quickly. They exposed the bank to significant liquidity risk and interest rate risk, didn't hedge that risk. We now know that supervisors saw these risks and intervened. We know that the public saw all this. We know that SVB experienced an unprecedentedly rapid and massive bank run. So this is a very large group of connected depositors, concentrated group of connected depositors, in a very, very fast run, faster than the historical record would suggest.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now Business. I'm Dani Laurel. The World Bank says the Philippines should generate better jobs for young Filipinos who bore the brunt of the labor market shock during the pandemic. The World Bank noted that the labor force participation rate gap between the youth and prime age adults increased significantly during the pandemic. This as the Filipino youth suffered a learning crisis, increased poverty, and challenging labor market conditions. The World Bank says the government should provide targeted support to young Filipinos, as productive young workers could help with the country's long-term growth and development. Grab Philippines says the number of drivers applying to join the network has tripled after the LTFRB loosened requirements. Grab Philippines says the increase came as the LTFRB removed the Certificate of Conformity or COC in securing a vehicular franchise. The COC is required for a car bought through loans to prove that the lender allows the driver to use the car for transport network vehicle service. Grab Philippines is now seeking to modify another requirement, namely financial capability via proof of bank deposit amounting to 20,000 per unit. With the surge in application, Grab also hopes the LTFRB will roll out at least 20,000 more TNVS slots in Metro Manila. Influencers joined U.S. lawmakers in protesting restrictions on the social media app TikTok. This amid mounting pressure from lawmakers and national security hawks to ban the app over fears that it could censor content, influence users, and pass personal data to Beijing. Now, due to fears over cybersecurity, U.S. lawmakers introduced a bill granting the Commerce Department new power to ban foreign tech which pose national security risks. Lawyers and China watchers say the bill would circumvent the speech protections embedded in the existing law. Aside from this, influencers say banning TikTok would affect their livelihoods and be detrimental to important advocacies.
A TikTok ban wouldn't just put my business at risk. 95% of my livelihood would disappear overnight. Along with this entire community of creators and customers that I have built over the platform.
It's become a vital platform for advocates across society and across the political spectrum to connect, share their stories, and help change people's lives. So to Congress, I urge you to consider the impact that a ban on TikTok would have on advocates like myself.
We can keep TikTok, we could protect freedom of speech, and we could deal with the privacy concerns at the same time. We could do both, and right now we're not trying to do both.
The government eyes selling more smuggled agricultural goods at Kadiwa stores. This after the Sugar Regulatory Administration approved the sale of smuggled sugar at Kadiwa stores at 70 pesos per kilo. The Agriculture Department says it is considering selling smuggled rice next as they do not spoil easily. The DA also says the government will not have to spend as much for testing and storage of rice compared to other products.
Unlike yung other agriculture commodities na yung perishable, carrots, yung onions, mukhang mas mahirap na ito ay madaling ma-infest, no? Pag may infestation at may contamination at tapos na konsumo ng ating mga consumer, mas mahirap na may-resolve yung problema na yun.
President Bongbong Marcos said the previous administration's order mandating the full devolution of basic services from the national government to LGUs is not an alternative to the Cha-Cha. He notes that the push for charter amendments in Congress has a different function from the Executive Order 138, which gives more responsibility and autonomy to LGUs. The administration is currently studying the EO in line with the Supreme Court's 218 Mandanas ruling to make sure that local governments will not struggle in implementing high-impact projects previously handled by the national government. Marcos also noted that his government will not be bound by a timetable that proposes to complete the transfers by 2024.
No. The charter change efforts are directed at the economic provisions on the Constitution, as far as I understand. And so that's what that is about.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Dani Laurel. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.